Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here. I just finished watching that Xbox business update that had been kind of promised to us since that all the rumors and chaos last week about Xbox maybe even leaving the console market. Now, I myself did a video on that and basically what the implications of that would have been had it actually occurred, why it actually made some sense, and, you know, that we just had to wait a week or so until we got an official update from Phil Spencer. Now, we got that update, so I just watched it. If you guys could do me a favor, like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, and then check out all the social media stuff in the description: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, channel, etc. Appreciate the support. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, I'm gonna just be honest. This was a whole lot of nothing. This was a big nothing burger. Case in point of why rumors are not really something you should necessarily propagate. Now, again, I respect that I myself made a video on it, but I also was basically like, calm down, let's wait and see what we have to talk about here. So there wasn't a whole lot of substance to this. It's really very strange that A, that this rumor happened, and that B, that they just kind of addressed it in such a weird way. But here's basically the breakdown of everything. So in my office, obviously, so I can look at my computer screen and just kind of, I wrote down some highlights. So let's talk about them. The first thing, this was only 22 minutes long. This video might even end up being longer. I doubt it, and I hope not, but it's a possibility. So the first thing they talked about was that Phil Spencer made it clear that there are going to be 4 upcoming big Xbox games that are going multi-platform. And when he says multi-platform, he's probably talking about PlayStation 5 specifically, although Nintendo Switch is also a possibility. He did later mention both platforms, but not necessarily in that context. The 4 games were not actually confirmed. He would not talk about which ones they were. He said 2 of them are very community-driven games, so there's a lot of speculation about Sea of Thieves maybe being one. And they said 2 of them were just kind of games that, you know, are just maybe going over there. So a lot of people think it maybe like Hi-Fi Rush. So that was the first thing that they started talking about, was just kind of cushioning you into being like, hey, some more Xbox content that's exclusive is going to start going to other platforms as well, but for now it's just 4, and that doesn't mean, and he was very clear about how, like, that doesn't mean everything that's Xbox related is just going to start going to other platforms, though they also said that everything will continue to go to PC. They made a big deal about that. Phil also had a very interesting comment that just kind of went by. He basically said, exclusives are less and less likely to be a thing over the course of the next 10 years. Kind of, if you ask me, he was kind of prepping people by saying, like, hey, don't expect a whole lot of stuff that's made for Xbox to only exist on Xbox. We're kind of past that point as a business model. And I'm not even sure it ever, I mean, it hasn't been for a long time, since technically everything gets on PC, but as he gets to a point where, you know, they want to put content on competing hardware, they have the option to do so. Now, we don't know which games, again, those 4 will be, or in the future what they're going to do, but I took this to mean this was his way of softening the blow to the community by being like, buy Xboxes, enjoy the gaming experience you're going to have on them, just don't expect anything on Xbox to only be available on Xbox. In other words, they're prepping, I would say, for the end of exclusivity for the most part. That said, Matt Booty actually said very clearly, he's like, Game Pass will be only available on Xbox. It's not going to appear on PC, I guess, although I think it does, but it's under Microsoft Game Pass or something like that. But what I think he meant when he said that was that it wasn't going to come on PlayStation or Nintendo or other competing console hardware. So that's actually interesting. Like, that's actually one that people were speculating, myself included. And he says that's not happening. So that's good, at least not anytime soon, because they made it sound like this is their plan for the next 10 years out, for anybody who's curious. And I keep looking up because I'm looking at the screen. They're very interested in more crossplay and cross saves across their various games, but there's a lot of work to do in that. So they didn't really elaborate on this a whole lot, but basically what they were talking about is they want more and more of their games to work with other versions of said games, and especially to have saves be cross-compatible between platforms. That way everything kind of has like a simultaneous, you know, nice, easy experience. But he said a lot of the games were just not built with that in mind, so they have to go in and do a lot of work to that kind of thing. Apparently Activision stuff is going to start coming to Game Pass, which is in no way shocking considering they own them now. They were talking about Diablo specifically. Call of Duty was not actually mentioned there, but I would assume that would be one of them. Now, Xbox's focus is going to be the concept of playing anywhere. Expect Xbox content on multiple platforms. That was a chunk of it. They were talking about Play Anywhere being, I think it was Phil Spencer was talking about this. He's like, we already like that, you can play any game for Xbox, on the Xbox ecosystem and on PC, and we want to try to expand that. Now, he didn't necessarily mean the PS5 and Switch, although he did not remove them. He did start talking about things like mobile phones. Well, obviously phones are mobile, but you get my point. Phones, and I would speculate he also means things like TVs. There are some television models out there that actually have Game Pass built in. So stuff like that, I think, is what he's trying to get at. The idea that Xbox can also be hardware and software. It doesn't necessarily have to be just a box, I think was the point he was getting at. Xbox, and they've made this interesting little jab that is not really a jab, but kind of fascinating. They were going on and saying that Xbox, Microsoft in particular, because they own Activision, because they own Bethesda, and they own all these other studios, they're now technically one of the biggest publishers for both PlayStation and Nintendo hardware, which is kind of fascinating because, I guess that's technically true. And that's another way of softening the blow of being like, we're already doing this. It's not going to be a whole lot different when we're doing more of it. So yeah, I guess for basically this, honestly, in a lot of ways felt like this was made specifically for Xbots, as the fanboy term is, to watch and, kind of get their head out of the older model of video game industry and say like, look, yes, we are Xbox, and it doesn't have to be about just us. We're fine putting our games on other hardware, etc. So it felt like almost like a breakup video or something, like where they were trying to be like, hey, let's go out to dinner and talk. Like, it felt a little bit like that, but there wasn't a whole lot actually said that was that surprising. It was just sort of a couple of confirmations. That being one of them, like, yes, we're going to start putting more stuff on competing hardware because it doesn't really matter to us. Sarah Bond, who was there, confirmed there is more hardware coming. Something this holiday season, so possibly Project Brooklyn, that like somewhat slimmed version of the Xbox Series X that had no disk drive. That she didn't confirm what, she just said something was coming this holiday season, and she made very clear they are in fact working on a next generation system. Again, no other additional details to that. They are just working on it. So given all of this digital infrastructure discussion, it is, if you ask me, probably their way of setting up and saying that the next version won't have any sort of disk drive and that we're done with the physical media side of things, though they did not say that. It's just kind of you read between the lines, because the next question after that she was asked was about preservation. I actually give them mad props for wanting to talk about this, because lately that's actually been an issue with a lot of digital content being pulled from various ecosystems. In a lot of cases it's film and TV, but also game preservation, obviously, because that's what they're in here. There's a lot of people being like, it's really annoying when all this stuff gets pulled and whatever. Like, what is Xbox's position on that? Because you guys are doing so much of this content, and so much of it doesn't get any sort of physical edition, which she didn't say that part, but she's just like, what is basically Xbox's position on game preservation? And the answer was that the Xbox ecosystem would ideally eventually run closer to the way Windows does. Phil Spencer was making the point that if you look at Windows, I mean, Microsoft has been making it for decades, but stuff is cross-compatible all the way back to like Windows 1.0. There's still limitations in modern iterations of Windows because they have to be backwards compatible with stuff that goes back like 40 years, maybe not 30 years, whatever it is. And he's got a point there, but that to me did not satisfy, because I personally don't believe, digital preservation at the mercy of a company's servers is property, but that's a different discussion entirely. Point is, he was trying to make the case, and I'll give him a point here. He was trying to make the case that we are trying our best to make sure everything is as compatible and functional as possible. And to me, it felt like what he wanted to talk about is just say, like, because the next point they brought up is the end segment was essentially, trust us, buy digitally, we'll make sure your stuff works. Like, the whole last couple of minutes was really them just talking about that, being like, you can trust us with digital infrastructure, like, we're not taking anything down, it's all fine to just buy digitally, and all your stuff will just exist within our cloud services and our cross compatibility and blah 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 blah. So when I step back from all of this and I watch it again in my mind, really what this was we're focusing more on digital content. Trust us on the whole thing. We won't take any of it down. And don't be too shocked when you see Xbox content also appear on competing hardware, because we don't really consider it competition anymore. Don't worry, we are going to do another physical Xbox box, in the sense that we will make our own box you can play our games on. But that doesn't mean you necessarily have to use that. You could use a PC, or depending on how extreme it eventually goes, you can use it on other pieces of hardware. That's kind of all there really was to this. To me, it was not particularly reassuring as someone who likes physical media, because it was not in any way really addressed. If anything, it confirms for me that they probably are pretty much done with physical media, as they're just saying, trust us on the whole digital thing, which I don't agree with personally. So it's possible the next iteration of Xbox hardware is entirely digital. It would not shock me at this point. And if that's the case, guaranteed Sony does the same thing. Nintendo, I think, would hold out a little longer because they're Nintendo, but yeah. So that was about it. It was less doom and gloom and more kind of nothing. It was actually, if I'm honest, it was kind of boring to watch, which was probably by design. The whole thing felt very sanitized, like to the point where they clearly rehearsed it a bunch of times. Because like there were times where the woman asking the question, she would ask a question. It was never directed at anyone specific, but everyone knew exactly who to respond. Like Phil did one question and then she asked another, and they literally looked at Matt Booty before he started talking because they knew he was the one who was supposed to respond to that question. It just felt very sanitized, like a bunch of lawyers had planned it out and whatever. It's just how it felt. It wasn't very particularly engaging, and there wasn't a whole lot of drama to it, at least not yet. But it was probably very smart, because what they don't want to do is recreate what happened when Microsoft announced the Xbox One, and they're like, here's all this shocking stuff about how it's digital, online only, etc., and you have no time to adjust to it. This is I honestly think it was a little almost like a breakup with physical media, is how it felt a little bit to me, and it's just giving us years of warning in advance to just kind of prepare. We are going to keep making machines. They won't necessarily have discs. And if you want them, you can get them maybe on other systems too, because we don't really care about that. The Xbox business model, I've been thinking about it a lot since this whole thing, is very fascinating because it always has kind of run at a loss. And, it was always been kind of a jobs program, et cetera. And a lot of people just have problems with that whole storyline. And then, again, the original reason that Microsoft even got into Xbox in the first place was that Sony was taking over the living room. And I want to remind everybody what that meant at the time. You have to understand that, obviously, Microsoft's entire system was built on the idea that PCs will be there and that Windows will always be a dominant force of the PC. And as ridiculous as this will sound now, back in 2000 when the PlayStation 2 came out and Sony was starting to take over and etc., there was a legitimate fear that the PC was kind of a fad and that it might actually go away, because if you didn't need a PC, you could just use a PlayStation 2 to watch your movies, to stream online, to download content, to browse the internet. What did you need a PC for? I know that sounds ridiculous now, but that was the original fear. So the basic idea behind Xbox wasn't so much that they cared about making a video game console. It was that they wanted to make sure that they stayed relevant enough that computers were always necessary. Basically, what I'm saying is Windows subsidizes Xbox on purpose. They don't care how much money Xbox loses, because its existence has always prevented Sony and other companies from taking over and eliminating the PC. This same thing happened, like 10 years ago, when everybody thought we're getting rid of PCs in favor of phones and tablets and all that. And they were like, no, integrate Xbox into that and just keep Microsoft relevant, and then just find ways to make sure the PC is still important. That's what the Xbox is all about. Hence the constant now iteration of just putting all this stuff onto PCs in general. So I mean, he literally said the whole point is to try and keep it similar to Windows. I could see them eventually trying to take Xbox into a direction where Xbox as an ecosystem is almost like the OS of gaming. And he even mentioned it's a little bit harder to do that with video game consoles because they're more of a locked system. And I think that that's the place Microsoft would like to go with it, is that you have to remember they're ultimately a software company. And if they could, they would love to have Xbox as not only the operating system, but become one of the biggest publishers for it and almost turn consoles into what they've done with PCs. I mean, outside of those individuals that choose to use something like Linux and, of course, Apple users, it's pretty much dominated by Windows and Microsoft. So it's interesting to see that that might be what they kind of want now out of consoles. But yeah, anyway, so in the end, not a whole lot happened with this, but just, yeah, you can go watch it for yourself if you want. This video isn't quite as long, but hopefully a little tad more entertaining. Anyway, that'll do it for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little recap on it. Please do me a favor, like the video, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't done that before, as well as check out all my social media stuff in the description: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, and my travel channel. Appreciate the support on all those platforms. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.